There we go. Welcome to Productivity Power Hour. Yeah, we're just getting started here, and Ron, thanks a lot for being with me on this journey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, Don. We have a lot of similarities in our passions and interests, and love the conversations we have. So thanks.
Yeah, and I feel like through a lot of those same conversations. I mean, it's what more or less started this whole thing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like as we talk more and more about many of the things that might actually be impacting people in terms of general productivity, but also just the distractions that are out there as well, which kind of led us to the topic for today as also. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head there with distractions. Times are different. 30, 20 years ago, there were only a few modalities to ring fire alarms, right? Or to say, hey, this is you had to call somebody, write somebody a letter. Now, people can ring your fire alarm via text, via Teams message, via social media, so many different modalities to communicate. It becomes more difficult now to parse through what is a priority and what to spend your time on. So, love the topic. Hat tip to you, Don, for this topic because this is certainly a good one, and yeah, excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so I guess I mean just to kind of get us started off, right? I mean, in terms of your daily routine, how do you maximize time management? Right now especially because I feel like it's just more tough than ever. You're trying to figure out exactly how do I maximize my time management.
Yeah, I think for me, Don, I mean, it's a great question. I'm still kind of going through that journey. I think is there's new technology. So there's new technologies that are helping us that are emerging every day. But there's also new technologies that are making things harder for us. So you start thinking about, where are the things where are the problems, the contemporary problems today, where are the contemporary solutions? So I start thinking about AI. And really in my daily routine, AI has become ubiquitous with almost everything that I do. Not that I lean too heavily on it, but things as simple as taking meeting notes, or if you're going to make a post on LinkedIn, it's a lot easier to tell an AI, hey, here are the key points, here are the key messages, here's the audience, this is what I want it to do. And you've already got the content in there. They're just sort of now shaping it and putting it together, whereas that might have taken you hours to do. You can do it in a matter of minutes. So I've been able to do that. I've been able to incorporate leader standard work, into my life, which I do that in a very particular way, Don. I am not a maximalist when it comes to leader standard work because I think they can be too inflexible, especially with changing priorities and dynamics. But I do endorse leader standard work as sort of a guide, is to say, hey, I'm going to give myself permission, to work on creative activities, sales or business development. And here I'm going to give myself permission, these block of times to work with clients in things like that. So, again, I would say because of all the modalities in the digital age, it's almost impossible to set a schedule and say, hey, these are my priorities for the next week or month. It's going to change. So you kind of just need a guide there and leveraging AI. That's sort of been what I've done. But most of all, and then I'll sort of turn it back over to you, I've learned to let fires burn. Um, there's so many priorities. There's so many things in a digital world to maximize your schedule. Sometimes you have to be okay with letting some fires burn around you. And if you're not okay with that, you're going to end up not prioritizing the right things and mismanaging your time. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Don?
Yeah, I mean, so what I hear you saying with regards to leader standard work, I do want to kind of break this down for folks as well, right? I mean, I'm a firm believer in time blocking. So um, I wrote a book, titled Overcommitted. The whole idea around that book was this idea that, we all spend too much time focused on things that don't move the ball down the field, right?
Yep.
And at the same time, and meetings are a great example of that in my book, right? I mean, many meetings, if you think about 90% of the time is not focused on you and might be focused on a synchronization event, right? To try and bring everybody together to make sure that everybody understands what's happening or whatever. That synchronization event, maybe it could happen in 15 minutes at a stand up, or maybe it happens at some brief event overall, and then people take away their 10% of their participation somewhere else where it's more impactful. But I do firmly believe in time blocking. I think that it's a great way to sort of set aside the time that you need to focus on the right things. I don't feel like a lot of the tools that are out there today really help you do that. And I have a feeling that given the evolution of things between what I see in Notion and what I see in AI coming and things like that, I think one of these days we will have kind of these are the ways that I want to think about things, and something that helps us plan that time better. And I've heard that there are AI tools that get us further down that path, but at the same time, guys like me, I have multiple calendars that I have to manage
Yep.
for the different businesses that I have and the different activities that I have. And there are very few tools that kind of bring all the elements together. And I have to be very careful about the time that I spend, right? I mean, I can't go spending time, to your point about letting the fires burn, right? I can't go spending, hours and hours on things like email and things like that. I've got to very, very quickly be able to understand what needs to be impacted now and go take care of whatever that is. Hold the meetings that actually are needed with new clients as well as clients that are ready to engage with us. I mean, it's a rapid fire world that I live in, and I feel like still a lot of people hold meetings without agendas and kind of wing it, and that's what yeah that's
Yeah,
what we have
no,
to struggle with today. So yeah.
I agree. I think meetings are a pet peeve of mine. I did a video not long ago. It was called "Why Your Meetings Suck." Uh, don't know why I thought of that term, but basically what it says is meetings to me are one of the most important aspects of a company. And it's almost like the term meeting has a negative connotation. It's really communication. Communication is the most important thing, or one of the most important things. Whether you talk US Army, whether you talk aviation, I mean, they're mantras, aviate, navigate, communicate, shoot, move, communicate. You communicate in everything you do. And if the way in which that you communicate is not effective, your company is going to be sluggish. So meetings have to have a purpose and an outcome. And I won't get into my whole spiel of how you should structure meetings. Maybe I'll write a book or a thing about that. But the one point I want to make is meetings must have an outcome. Like you said, are we here to sync? Are we just here to sync and feel good and brainstorm? Are we here to make a decision? Right? Are we here to assess a risk and come away with something? What are we here for? One of the things that will cripple companies are people that like to have good conversations. Look, I like to have good conversations too. I like to feel good. I like to just talk. But ultimately, when you're in business, you've got to be reaching some sort of an outcome. And there's nothing more defeating than when you've had multiple meetings. Now you're having a meeting, you're talking about the same thing again. You're not sure what decision was made, who is supposed to make the decision, who's in control of this meeting, and now all of a sudden, you're really wasting everybody's time. And companies that have figured out how to have disciplined meetings with agendas, IPOs, input process outputs, and can lead by example. It has to start with the C suite. It
Mm.
cannot start at any other level. It will fail. The C suite has to start meeting like that. and showing people this is the way you meet, and then it should trickle down. But yeah, so anyway, I didn't mean to hijack you there, but meetings to me are what will make and break a company. There's a book. Oh my goodness, it's coming away from me right now. Maybe Rockefeller Habits or something like
Mm,
that, but it's about the rhythm of your business, and that's about how you meet and communicate, how critical it is. And it's
yep.
so interesting how it's overlooked. And in almost every case, when I sit down with C-suite in their meetings, they run traditionally ineffective meetings. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's my piece. I'll get off my soapbox, Don, and hand it back over to you.
No, I think it's, I mean, I think it's a, I mean, it's a good point because I feel like there's a reason why, so many people have focused on this, right? I mean, Jeff Bezos had said, "Hey, look, I don't want to see, more people in a room than what you could feed with two pizzas," right? And there's a reason
Yeah.
why, they sort of isolated like the amount of people that you could have in the room. Then Shopify at the beginning of, I think it was last year, they said, "Hey, look, we're just totally banning from this organization meetings," right? I mean, and the reason why is because I feel like it's been the one thing that's been abused for an awful long time, is that we sort of fill our calendars with these things. And so as we're talking about time management in the digital age, it's to me it's one of those things where you could spend an awful lot of time in meetings and just kind of grind your calendar in and still not get anything meaningful done. I guess in terms of deciding, right? So I mean, to me there's two sides of this. Yes, you could say the executives inside the organization have to have a responsibility for it at some level. I also think though that I mean, I've repeatedly said this, inside of organizations that I engage with, that look, if there isn't an agenda, we shouldn't have a meeting. And then
Yes.
you go to the organization, and more times than not, they don't take the time either during the current session that they're working on or the next, sort of, planning time or whatever to try and think through what should that agenda be. And yet you know that you have to have the critical minds in the room to sort of work through things. And it provides this real sort of challenge. I feel like. I mean, because I do feel like there needs to be a very clear rule in organizations in terms of, look, we're just not having meetings. We're not tying up bodies unless we know what the outcome's going to be. Have you seen anybody successfully do that?
Yes, I have. So really where I was able to get good I don't want to say upbringing in proper meetings was with GlaxoSmithKline. So GSK had a program. Now I don't think it was enterprise wide. It was part of their I don't want to call it a knockoff and do them a disservice, but it was part of their version of the Toyota production system that they were implementing. And part of that was meetings. Now, I'm not going to give you exactly their structure. I'm going to give you my version, and then I teach and use now, which is different than theirs, but it's effectively the same thing. Meetings with more than four people must have roles. They have to have roles, and those meetings must have IPOs. The input, the process, and the output. The process is the agenda. The input is what we bring, right? We don't go to school, we don't go to work without something, right? We come with the homework that we had or the research we were supposed to do, or some opinion or proposal, right? Then we have a process. What are we going to do in this meeting, right? Are we going to brainstorm? Are we going to do a roundtable? Like what does the process look like? And at the end of this, where do we need to get to? Do we need to get a decision? Do we need to, whatever it is? So that's how they kind of did that. And as far as the roles go, you had really these are my four roles. They had some different roles. They're kind of the same. Scribe number one, and the scribe takes notes on raids, risks, actions, issues, decisions, things like that. They don't record the meeting and everything people say. They
Mm,
highlight those key things. When you give executives complicated meeting minutes, nobody reads them. There needs to be the critical things. Then you need to have a monitor in that meeting. That monitor is the one that's looking at the agenda, making sure are we moving through it. Are we talking about what we're supposed to be talking about? Or now are all of a
Timekeeper,
sudden, and
timekeeper,
you've
it's
been hit,
also
yeah,
referred to. Yeah,
timekeeper,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
they can be the same thing. So yeah, you've got the monitor, the scribe, the timekeeper, and then most importantly, the facilitator. Who is in charge of this meeting? Who is the one that called it? Who is the one that wrote the agenda? Who is the one that is responsible for making it for coming out of this with something? So while this maybe is kind of my version of it, GSK really did a good job. And not only doing this, going steps further, they wouldn't allow you to schedule the last 5 minutes of any half hour hour. They called it an oxygen program. And I loved how they branded it. And people liked it because it was branded and it meant oxygen. We get to breathe. I don't have to run between buildings anymore. I can use the bathroom. I can grab a quick bite. There's so many fundamental problems with how we communicate in business. In GSK, hat tip to them. They really saw that and did a good job of incorporating that, and that sort of made me kind of have my strong opinions today. So hope I didn't ramble on too long there, Don. But does that make sense as far as a success
It does.
story?
It does. I feel like it's a similar thing for me, right? I've had clients that have said, "Hey, look, we need to make a fundamental shift, overall, and want to have very clear, defined roles in meetings, and we defined, at least the elements of, what has to happen, in the meeting as well, and similarly, the same thing, inside of." The inside of executive meetings as well. And I mean, I feel like the most successful, foundation of this is that at some level, every meeting also would have a parking lot as well, because these random topics
Yep.
that honestly we should cover in some other scenario or something else need to be put somewhere, and there needs to be a place, for them. But oftentimes, again, in terms of managing your time, the one critical thing is being able to say, okay, so this is outside of the boundary of what we're going to cover here,
Exactly.
and agree upon that as a group, as well, that, hey, look, these things are going to get put in the parking lot. We'll either deal with them or not based on, what we're going to carry forward, because, frankly, that, just having, some random topic isn't always helpful for managing your time, as well.
No, a
So
hundred
yeah, I,
percent.
I, I agree with you.
I've got a funny story on that. So, I love the parking lot idea is awesome because it's a way that helps people. It's a way to park things that are out of scope without hurting people's feelings or deprioritizing it. Uh, it's there. We're going to remember it. But back when I was in the army and started doing Lean Six Sigma, I got my green belt in the army. Obviously, I'm my black belt now, but we had these sessions, and this master black belt had this technique for monitoring parking lot type stuff and things that were out of scope. And what it was is he had an Elmo doll, like one of those giggly Elmo dolls, and I don't know if there was a person assigned or if anybody could just pick it up. But if any time somebody was going off topic, you'd pick up the Elmo doll and throw it at them, and it
Mm.
would make a little giggly laugh, and everybody would laugh. So what it effectively did was, because it's hard when you see people that are passionate about something, but it's just not the right time to talk about it, and it's not on topic, and it doesn't mean it's not important. Um, it's hard for facilitators to break it up, interrupt them. But that method seemed to just help people laugh it off and be
Mm.
okay transitioning. So I'm not saying that that's the what people should do, but there are creative ways to make sure that you can stay on track, park items without hurting people's feelings, and making sure that they're still a priority. Because you are right, that's what kills meetings. Is when we came in to
Right.
talk about X and get to Y, but now we're talking about A to get to B, and that was
Mm-hmm.
not the priority. So yeah, we have to fix that mid meeting, and sometimes it's more easier said than done.
Yeah, the equivalent of that I've seen, not throwing a doll, but is a code word, right? So, and I frequently use this in meetings even today. Look, we need to have some form of a code word, so as things start to go off track. The team could essentially call it on anybody in the room, and I also say as a facilitator, which is nice from a facilitation standpoint, is that the code word is there for anybody to use
Yeah.
as well. And we could certainly have a 30-second sideline to try and figure out, is this something that has to be discussed now, or do we all agree that, look, this thing is truly outside of the scope of whatever it is that we're coming together for? So yeah,
Yeah, no, I think
but
yours is the
yeah.
more conventional method. A code word, sometimes a fun code word. I've used tippy toe before because I love Seinfeld. I'm a Seinfeld fanatic fan, and anybody that is watching this and is will understand what tippy toe means. But anyway, something that also has some humor to kind of cut through it, because it always is difficult to cut somebody off mid passionate sentence when they're talking about maybe something that isn't out of scope. So yeah, I mean, I get, fully agree. Meetings need to be more structured. They're meetings are really able to move the needle for a company, and I was almost even call them a silent killer, Don. For some companies that they could look at their books, they could look at all these different things and go, why? What's not working? Maybe the way you communicate isn't working. It could just
Yeah.
be that simple. So yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with Seinfeld. I don't know what a tippy toe is, but I'm certainly very familiar, with, and I would have made it no soup for you. So
Yeah, no,
that would have been
something
my
like that.
Seinfeld reference. But
Something like that. But that makes people laugh and have fun. So, Don, I actually had a question for you. So, as far as maximizing your time, you're a prolific content maker. I make content as well. A lot of people make content to reach people, things like that. How, in a digital age, as you're making content, how do you maximize your time? It's somewhere I actually typically struggle to maximize my time, whether I'm delegating, whether I'm using certain things. It seems like there's so many tools, so many methods, so many ways that I almost feel suffocated by all of the ways that I can optimize my time management. How do you think about that?
so I guess I have a few approaches, right? So if it's written content, mostly here on LinkedIn, it'd be a good example. Um, for written content, I normally have a social media calendar, right? So I've taken the time at some point in the month to sit down and go, okay, so, there's X amount of days this month. I typically post 3 times a day, every weekday at least. I mean, I used to post 7 days a week, and then just wasn't really seeing a lot of engagement through the weekend, and so just pulled back. Saved myself, gave myself a little grace over the weekend. We typically release podcasts, so the audio podcast that I have for Life Science Success comes out over the weekend anyway, and that be a natural sort of fit for something to come out. But the reality is, so I've sat down at some point and thought broadly about, okay, so in terms of weeks, here are the things that I normally cover, right? So I typically, will talk about digital media marketing, and I'll talk about some level of, the topics around productivity and in, managing a company, as it goes through its evolution. And so with that, I pick a weekly topic, and then based on the weekly topic, we sort of break that down then into days. And
Mm.
then I oftentimes will use ChatGPT to just sort of brainstorm. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's the things that I'm thinking. Now, I've had a lot of conversations over the last 48 hours about, um, where ChatGPT is going and some of the struggles people are having recently with it as well. I do feel like there's a level of training that you have to do with the tool. And somebody just recently, had commented, on my coaching of them, with regards to this. So if you have content today that is Ron Eggert content that you want to put out, what I would say is take some of your previous content and either send ChatGPT to go learn that on the internet, right? So if you have it on a website or in a document or whatever, stick that back in and train it on how you write, so that it's thinking like you to start, and then frame up the way that you want it to then think about actually creating content as well. And so by doing that, taking those extra steps, you sort of wind up with a smarter model that then at the end of the day can hopefully produce something that will at the end of the day be more meaningful to you. I sort of caution everybody. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, we all have to read things and make sure that this looks and sounds like us. And if it doesn't, then, I mean, I don't feel right putting it out. I feel like, at the end of the day, I would rather throw it away and start over again or find some other tool to help me. But at the end of the day, having a content calendar and knowing what I'm going to produce in terms of social proof in that month, and then how do I sort of progress that forward, is something that's really helped me just develop things that I feel like are more on brand for me at the end of the day. And then if it's not, then I continue to sort of look at kind of the variety of tools that are out there to help you with that.
No, that's helpful. I think you make a good point on Chat GPT, because what I've noticed from some people, uh, they're fine people, but you can tell their entire post is Chat GPT. And what I mean by that, it's okay if your whole post was made by Chat GPT, but like you said, you've got to tell Chat GPT, or it has to learn how you speak and think, and then you have to reread that and make sure, oh, that does sound like me. That's Ron. Um, and oftentimes you see people and you go, that is standard Chat GPT. That's the standard whatever tone. Chat GPT is usually a little over verbose in how it translates things. It usually doesn't speak in business or concise or brief unless you tell it to. And and yeah, I think that can hurt your brand. You want to stay on brand. There's people out there that have strong opinions, or they have personalities, or they have certain quirks or things, but that's part of what sells. That's part of what people know them as. And then all of a sudden, if now you're switching your content and it's written by Chat GPT, doesn't sound like there's obviously issues. So yeah, I would agree. My method is probably not the best, because I don't pay for Chat GPT yet, although I should. It's not like it's expensive. I've just sort of been waiting on Copilot. I really want Copilot, Don. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, with Chat GPT, I typically I have a script that I copy paste in that it says, this is what Ron sounds like. This is this is who Ron is and how Ron writes. And then I will give it a more specific description of what I want based on the content. And I mean, you've read some of my things in my podcast. There's Chat GPT. There's no AI in the world that could create, like, you would have to talk to those people and know about their businesses to be able to have
Yep.
that. But once you have that content, and it sounds like you can ask Chat GPT, hey, I just need you to clean this up a little bit. Wherever maybe I have some sentence structures, things like that. So it's not going to overhaul your tone. It's just going to make sure that you didn't fumble around with a bad verb or something like that. So yeah, I think ChatGPT is great. What I'm really looking forward to, Don, is Microsoft Copilot. I don't know how much you know about Copilot. I'll tell you and the audience what I know about Copilot. I have it's their, not their full version, but I think it's their preview version on my computer. I think some people have that, or a few people were able to get that. So I've been able to play around with it. It's a lot like ChatGPT, but the whole version is much more powerful. So several months ago, almost a year ago, Microsoft let certain executives and key people from influential businesses beta test the whole thing. And there
Hmm.
was one such person that I knew that worked at Moderna that was one of those people. And they were able, so you'd meet with them and they would say, hey, I'm going to record the conversation. You say, okay, good to go. And it records it. And boy, it would take all of that stuff. And he had it rigged somehow where it would not only produce the meeting notes and email it to everybody, but then it would capture the actions in, I think, the MS Planner and automatically give that to you with the, like, it's unbelievable. The amount of automation that went into that. Now I'm sure it takes time to learn it, to do it. I know Microsoft just came out with Copilot at the enterprise level. I don't know how many people are using it yet, but to me, the Copilot is the cheese at the end of the race, because that's where, I typically use Microsoft products. I use Teams. So now, if I have an AI that's integrated into that entire environment, boy, how much more could you do? I mean, I start even thinking about the business cases. So I love Chat GPT. It's been great, but I'm really waiting to understand what this Copilot solution is going to look like, and how it could potentially revolutionize. What do you know about Copilot? Have you heard anything? Do you know more about it or anything like
Yeah.
that?
So, certainly I've heard the same things that you just covered. As well. I mean, I have a feeling that there's going to be a number of these tools, out there as well. I mean, Google has their version of, AI assistants for, things inside of the Google Suite, as well. And I just have a feeling that, like you said, I mean, there's a level of, just sort of, I mean, I use Fireflies routinely. I think you've probably seen this with meetings that you and I have been on. Fireflies routinely will join meetings that we're on, and it does a lot of the same things. But again, it's a bespoke tool. It's not integrated, and so
Yeah,
at the end of the day, if you have action items, you still have to go back and capture them and then
you have
pull
to
them
put them
into
in.
some
Yeah,
other tool.
exactly.
And it goes back to this whole idea of how do we maximize our time and really make sure that that things really carry forward. And to me, integrated tools are the way forward. It's going to be it has to be, AI will have to be inside the suite of tools that we use for productivity as we go forward, right? I mean, it's just the
Yeah, exactly.
reality. And I think we're all going to be challenged with, as we have more and more bespoke tools, those bespoke tools will push the envelope in terms of what those tools can do, I have a feeling. And then the more integrated tools will lag behind, and then we'll have this sort of back and forth that you'll have to deal with. But throughout time, what I look forward to is just the benefit, that's going to come from, having a lot of these things in place.
Yeah, I know 100%. And I'm even seeing companies, again, to mention Moderna. Moderna came up with their own AI, their own proprietary AI called MChat. Because obviously they don't want other people to have, some of their information. But just let me give you an example of how powerful this is and how much time this saved me. Uh, when I came into the organization, we had to look at a lot of the raw material deviations that they had throughout their entire drug substance network. And like any company, uh, deviations are, you are never not going to have deviations. So not
Right.
not a bad knock on Moderna. Everybody has them, but there's a lot of them, and over time there are thousands and thousands of them. Uh, so how do you parse through that and come up with what are the priorities and themes? Well, they came up with MChat, and MChat does all kinds of things. And MChat allows you to attach, one of those Excel sheets with tens of thousands of rows of data, and we'll spit you out what are the top raw material themes as far as issues go. And we even give you numbers associated with which ones have those in them. And I'm not saying that now, oh, now I have the problem solved. Now we have our strategic roadmap. That's not it. The point is, I just did 75% of the work in just a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Now I can go to the next layer and start to validate these things. Because now I Paretoed this. I've gotten rid of 9,000 records. Now we're only looking at 500 records. So now we can be more specific. It's just amazing the amount of time that saved. It almost makes me sick to think about. I mean, I know how I would have done it manually, and it would not have been fun in Excel.
Yeah.
It would have been. It would have been.
Lots of filtering, lots of
It would
pivot
have been a
pivot
ton of
tables, lots of
filtering, a
reading.
ton of VLOOKUPs. It would have been
Right.
an absolute mess, and that's if at the end of this, crazy Excel spreadsheet, I didn't have some mistake in it that made the end product wrong, right? So, AI is truly amazing, and I think, like you said, having it integrated into, businesses, applications, companies creating their own AI so that their proprietary information is protected, so that maybe again, a company like Moderna that has lots of data, some AIs can't handle all that data. They made sure theirs can. So I think it's endless what can be done with AI. But the one true thing is, any business executive or leader out there who is not thinking about AI to maximize their time, um, they certainly wouldn't want to say anything bad. They need to start doing it
Yeah.
quickly.
I mean, I just to kind of, just sort of center in on that point alone, right? I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, "Hey, look, I'm, like their LinkedIn post. Look, I'm going to continue to craft my own LinkedIn posts, by myself, and I'm not going to use AI." And my question oftentimes for these leaders is, okay, but whenever you write a document today, do you say I'm not going to use spell check and grammar check, which is built into Word? I mean, to me, if something could come to a quicker sort of equal version of what you would have produced, wouldn't you take that path overall? And I feel like there's this connotation still that's out there that's like, look, if it wasn't 100% written by humans from start to finish, there's some people just don't want to think that that content or that document or that email is as of equal value at the end of the day. And I guess what are your perceptions about that? Have you heard the same kind of angles?
Yes. Yeah. So this is not just a theme with AI. This is a theme with automation in general. So I would call this something bigger. It's a distrust of computers, and automation running things that typically humans have done. And the funny thing about it is, like you mentioned, we've been doing this for years. I mean, planes are autopiloted. So I think it's a thing of when things are new to people and they don't understand them, it's natural for people to be fearful of it and to want to reject it, or maybe not be fearful, but to be trepidatious about it. So I've definitely seen that with AI. I don't want it to have my information. I don't want it to, I want to sound authentic. I don't trust it. Yeah, it's a theme. Think about automated driving in cars. Think about how many people distrust, automation in cars. And look, I'm not here trying to sell anybody on anything, but there's a great joke by a comedian that says if you're fearful of automated cars, once the technology is then are you? It would almost sort of be the same thing as if when you walk into a grocery store, how those doors open and close automatically. You don't have to do
Yeah,
that.
right.
Has one ever shut on you? Has one ever shut on you?
Yeah,
Imagine
sure.
instead of
But
it
it can't.
being operated by a system, or somebody drunk was on one side and somebody high was on the other side pushing them together. And it's
mm,
crazy because that's what happens on the roads oftentimes. There's people unfit to drive. So again, we start to get into these uh, fearful thoughts about AI and about using it, about automation in driving, about automation in manufacturing. I've heard manufacturers tell me that they distrust automation and what it could do, to the quality of their product, because their people provide the quality of the product. And I don't deny the value of people, but I do deny the value of the ability of a person to reproduce and replicate the same thing over and over, versus a computer that runs programs. So it's a long-winded way of saying that I think it's just a general distrust of automation that people are still not used to. And
yeah.
until they get used to it and understand that it's a tool that can be used, that some of these things are safe, yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's one of those things where, the more that these tools are out there, the more that people will have to just consider, what the possibilities are. But like you, I see the same level of distrust that's out there just naturally in the world, and um, some of it's warranted and some of it's not, and I just feel like we like to swing the pendulum a little too far sometimes, and in this case, I do have a feeling that with all of the things that we're having to manage, the more that we could sort of, to go back to your original point in terms of having standard work in place, if the more that we could set in place those things, that then at the end of the day result in um, you're not being distracted by other stuff. You're sort of staying on point because of the fact that all these other things are more or less leading to keeping you on point. The better it'll be. And I mean, the best example for me is there have been days, and I hate to admit this as somebody that loves to focus on productivity, but there are days where, let's say, I wake up and I get sucked into a particular email just to start. And that's that one email. I normally get, I would say, roughly about 300 emails a day. There's a good majority of that's all newsletters and things like that that people send me. But there's legitimate emails mixed in there, right? And so I'm having to sift through all of these things as well. And I'm a strong believer in a zero inbox. So essentially, by the time I go to bed, I don't want to have any unread emails in my inbox. And so with that, it just leads to this whole sort of swirl that could happen overall. And I feel like there are capabilities that are coming um, that more and more will sort of avoid that swirl as well, so that you're again leveraging the most possible time that you have in the day.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And again, I think that these tools, these time, I mean, the digital revolution is, I mean, we're in it and it's continuing to pick up in pace. Um, tool, I mean, just what, 20, 25 years ago, I mean, people really didn't use the internet as much as they do today. Now we have Web 1, we have Web 2, now we have Web 3, we have AI. We have all these different technologies and things that can help make our businesses better, help make us more productive people. It's just a matter of, because things are moving so quickly, it's sort of difficult to stay up on what are the new trends, what are the things that are out there. But again, I think every good leader, like we talked about before, standard work or leader standard work, carve out a time, block a time, whether it's in a month, a quarter, a week, whatever it is, where you're going to explore what new is out there to help me. Like, here are my top productivity problems, right? Like I just told you, what I struggle to do my content quickly. That's something I need to fix. And I have a couple other things, but I need to block some time to come up with some solutions uh, uh, out there that can help me in this digital world and be better in time management. And I think people need to give themselves permission to do that, to think about these things, to just take a half hour, look at the new technologies that are out there that can help them, and make one decision that's going to make them more productive. And those things, I mean, I
Yeah.
mean it. You do one thing that's going to help you, and over time that compounds on itself, and you just get better. So
Yeah, I mean, I'll give people, that have the capability, just kind of my top list as well. I'd love to get your top list in terms of, the things and tools that you're, um, taking a look at or using, overall. So oftentimes, as somebody that's creating content, oftentimes I have to go create, images for slide presentations. I have to go create, images for a variety of things. And certainly, for anybody that's not heard of Canva before, I use Canva, which allows you to do a little bit of visual designing and things like that. But it's a lot of drag and drop, kind of designing, similar to what we're all used to in PowerPoint. The one like biggest amplifier that I've seen overall, and it's free at this point in time, is Microsoft Designer. And so in Microsoft Designer, you can actually craft an image for something that you're getting ready to put out or whatever, any sort of post or anything like that. You can go in there in 30 seconds, tell the designer, hey, look, I need an image that describes the productivity power hour, and here's what we're going to talk about today. And if you sort of click the one that comes with a word description with it, it includes the actual words versus like if you go to some of these other image generation tools, it just creates like gibberish, and you're sort of left with a messy looking image that doesn't represent what you want to put out there. So that level of yeah, AI has helped me quite a bit. I also, there are plenty of times where I leverage things like Quillbot, which helps you sort of suggest alterations to the ways that you're writing things, as well. It's one step above what I normally see in Word and things like that. So I leverage certainly that it provides me an awful lot of productivity, and just being able to, at the end of the day, put something back in, either Chat GPT. So I use Chat GPT for random brainstorming. Like if I'm
Yeah,
brainstorming something, that's where I go. I mean, it's just kind of my
I do the
default. Like
same thing. I'm with you.
I open it up and I go there. The last thing though is that if you need internet like data, you want like real data, and you want to know where did the references come from, open up Bing. I mean, to me, the Bing search engine and the ability to have like, hey, I'm trying to find you know who leverages Twitter versus LinkedIn. There was a somebody's recent blog post that I posted today that you commented on, and to me, Bing is like it's like the savior for somebody that like me who likes to be data driven, and at the same time, I'm like, where the heck did Chat GPT or anything else come up with its references? So those are my sort of brief go tos in terms of images, and then grammar, and lastly data. It would be those three tools.
No, that helps, and that sort of goes with your theme earlier in your post on creating presentations, in your article on creating those executive presentations. Right, that if you want to create a compelling presentation, you need compelling visuals, you need compelling graphics, not to just take up space. It has to have a point. But I've seen bad presentations with awful graphics that were copy pasted, from somewhere in Google. Didn't even take the time to try to put an outline around it, stuff like that. I mean, you notice those things. They say cleanliness is next to godliness, and that is true. When your presentation looks the part and it feels the part and it's crisp, the images are crisp, the writing's right, even if maybe your idea isn't the best, uh, you're gonna be given more probably attention than somebody that has an awesome idea, but they can't communicate. It's a bad
Yeah,
presentation, not organized, maybe has a kick butt business case, but isn't able to articulate it. Bad images. So, again, uh, how do you put together those presents? And those take a long time. And I know you've done professionally, so have I. It's not something you whip up in just a second. A lot of inputs are needed. But being able to leverage some of these AI image generators, being able to leverage Chat GPT to even say, hey, Chat GPT, this is how I'm thinking about opening. This is my opening sort of quote to try to capture the audience. Uh, what do you think of this? Because I'm trying to do XYZ. Or ChatGPT, I'm stuck between this quote and this quote. Which one better captures? Those things can help you, and it's almost like a personal assistant. So I've noticed that creating presentations and things has been easier with things like AI and sort of in this digital age, and I've been able to maximize my time better making those presentations rather than grinding them. That's what I used to feel like. They were just grinds to
Yeah.
try to make it look nice, and now it's so much easier.
Yeah, I actually, so the video that I just created, and it started with an article, and then somebody else had asked me, hey, look, where do you think we are in terms of AI and being able to actually generate a presentation with AI. And the reality that I see, and it kind of comes back to what you just said, is so you could use ChatGPT to brainstorm the way that
Yep.
you want to tell the story. Maybe, let's just say, maybe you love TED Talks. And so you say, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to think as if you were a speaker at a TED Talk. And here's my topic. I would like for you to help me create an outline. And these are the 5 things that I want to make sure that I touch on, and it would kick back an outline. It's not going to be able to judge the story as to whether or not if it's a good story. This is something that you have to do. And similarly, so the two tools that I just reviewed were the Gamma app, so Gamma.app, and then Beautiful.ai were two that I just reviewed, and then I posted them on the D3 Digital Media YouTube channel. It's for anybody that wants to go out and see it. But essentially, it was to sort of do this side by side and then leave it up to the audience in terms of choosing which one is right for you. Because I feel like at the end of the day, what I like may not be necessarily what you like, right? And
Yeah.
similarly, it can crank out a lot of really bad presentations. So you could
Oh,
you could turn out a lot of really bad information really fast. But unfortunately, the storytelling is left still to us, and the AI hasn't taken that away. And yet you sit there and go, I don't know, maybe I don't want that taken away. Maybe I want to craft my own story forever.
well, I look, I agree. I mean, I think humans are always going to be storytellers because storytelling is an art. AI can't. AI isn't an artist. You can tell AI, like you said, hey, these are the topics. I want you to think like a TED talk. I want you to do XYZ. But you said something very important. It's on you now to determine if that is a good story or if that is, and oftentimes for me, I'm not looking for Chat GPT to hit a home run. I just need him to hit a single and get me started. Help me start to think about this in a different way. I think oftentimes one of the most difficult parts is it's not outlining. It's usually easy to outline how you think about the story you want to tell. It's usually easy to think about the audience and the message. It's very hard to now, like, what does that look like? What could it start to look like? And at least
Right.
Chat GPT can start to give you some ideas of this is a way to approach it, or these are the type of things. So, ultimately, I think if people can start thinking about Chat GPT is, a tool, it's not a doer. It's not something that's going to do for you. It's something that's going to help you. It's one of those powerful personal assistants that's ever been. I mean, it really is. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, people had secretaries. They spent money on secretaries. People don't spend or admin assistants. That's usually not a thing anymore because of the advent of technology and that it's been easier. But now that there's so much technology, things are getting harder. You kind of need an assistant again, and bam, we have Chat GPT. Certainly, they can't do some things like assistants can do, or certain things like, hey, I want you to go run this small campaign. But boy, that's what an assistant was for. Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Can you read this for me? Like I've been working all day. I am clouded. I have no idea if this is. Can you just read this for me? And does this make sense? So there's so many good use cases for it. And when we talk about time management, it's better to send the right email, the right message that conveys the right thing to that target person, so you can move forward, rather than sending them the wrong message or something like that. Now you have to go back and forth to clarify. And sometimes, again, Chat GPT can help you think about ways to clarify and make your message more succinct. And that's usually what I'm always telling Chat GPT. Like, make it more succinct, make it sound more business, shorten it, like get to the
Yeah.
good stuff.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, that's how I think about
Like
that.
like you said, I don't feel like it does a great job at that though. I feel like
That's why I'm always
if you
telling it to do that. I'm like, really?
yeah
I even tell.
yeah
Sometimes I'll talk to Chat GPT like they're a person. It almost scares me a bit because that's where the future is going.
mm,
Where I'll be like, Chat GPT, seriously? I literally just ask you to make this more concise, and you spit out the same thing again.
yeah
But sometimes they knock it out of the park with what
mm,
you want. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting tool, and AI is an interesting time. And guys like us, leaders that embrace this up front, that are part of the bottom part of the S curve and adoption. You don't want to be a leader and be in that latter part of the S curve. Um,
no.
you know, so
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, I think a lot of people, to go back to our theme today, right around time management, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of acceleration coming out of this. I have a feeling that, just going to afford them much more time to spend time strategically thinking about where is their organization going versus, in the grind, writing out mundane emails and things like that, of which they could have, spent 30 seconds in proofreading and then clicking send, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
to me,
exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what this is
So,
about. And that's what this is about, the grind. And that's what I feel when I am doing things that I know are secretarial. They're not value added. They're not my secret sauce. They're not the thing that people pay me for. Right? People don't
mm,
pay me to write
yeah,
emails, and
do
they
your
pay me
expense
for
report.
to deliver very specific things. And when I'm
Right.
grinding on stuff, and I know that's what executives say to me all the time. It's the grind. It's the grind.
Mm,
Well, how can we be more productive so we're doing the thing that's releasing us energy, it's providing the most value, and it's not making us feel like we're constantly grinding, doing these things. So like you said, back to kind of the original point of time management. We want to feel good about the time we did. The days that end and you go, I feel like I got nothing done, are some of the worst days.
yeah.
And if anybody gets anything out of this, hopefully those days will become less for them.
So as we get to the top of the hour, Ron, there are two things that I wanted to do. So I do want to come back to us, like who we are, and then also up next, I have one of the topics that we have teed up for one of the next talks is navigating organizational change and strategies for success. So in terms of next week, next Thursday, plan is to do this, on a weekly basis, and we'll come back together and talk a little bit more about navigating organizational change and strategies for success.
Yeah, I love it.
All
This
right.
was great.
And Ron, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about you and how they would get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm Ron Eggert. I'm the co-founder owner of Propellant Consulting. I basically help micro to mid cap portfolio companies and businesses, drive growth and reduce costs and help get their company to the next level, be it exit, scalability, what have you. I've been working with these type of companies and PE firms for several years. I've worked with blue chip companies like GSK, Moderna, the U.S. Army, and yeah, I'm an OE junkie. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I'm an MBA. What else am I? I'm a certified project management professional. So I got all the cool letters and stuff like that. But yeah, people can get a hold of me, via my LinkedIn profile. They can get a hold of me via any my propellant consulting page. Really, any way that they can get a hold of me, contact me, and let's talk about what we can do to help you out.
Yeah. And so I also lead a process improvement company as well, MBB certified, and then also have my PhD and MBA as well. And so improvingprocesses.com would take you there. And then if you're needing digital media marketing services, you could go to d3dm.com, which will lead you to the main page for D3 Digital Marketing. And you can contact us there as well. Of course, LinkedIn is also a great place to touch base. So thanks, Ron, for doing this with